The seemingly inexhaustible spate of literature on the Third Reich continues unabated with the soon-to-be-published memoirs of Friedrich Schmeed. Schmeed, the best-known barber in wartime Germany, provided tonsorial services for Hitler and many highly placed government and military officials. As was noted during the Nuremberg trials, Schmeed not only seemed to be always at the right place at the right time, but possessed, quote, more than total recall, end of quote, and was thus uniquely qualified to write this incisive guide to innermost Nazi Germany. Following are a few brief excerpts. In the spring of 1940, a large Mercedes pulled up in front of my barber shop at 127 Königstrasse, and Hitler walked in. "I just want a light trim," he said, "and don't take too much off the top." I explained to him there would be a brief wait because von Ribbentrop was ahead of him. Hitler said he was in a rush and asked Ribbentrop if he could be taken next, but Ribbentrop insisted it would look bad for the Foreign Office if he were passed over. Hitler thereupon made a quick phone call, and Ribbentrop was immediately transferred to the Afrika Corps, and Hitler got his hair cut. This sort of rivalry went on all the time. Once, Göring had Heydrich detained by the police on false pretenses so that he could get the chair by the window. Göring was a dissolute and often wanted to sit on the hobby horse to get his haircuts. The Nazi high command was embarrassed by this, but could do nothing. One day, Hess challenged him. "I want the hobby horse today, Herr Field Marshal," he said. "Impossible, I have it reserved," Göring shot back. "I have orders directly from the Führer. They state that I am to be allowed to sit on the horse for my haircut." And Hess produced a letter from Hitler to that effect. Göring was livid. He never forgave Hess and said that in the future he would have his wife cut his hair at home with a bowl. Hitler laughed when he heard this, but Göring was serious and would have carried it out had not the Minister of Arms turned down his requisition for a thinning shears. I have been asked if I was aware of the moral implications of what I was doing. As I told the tribunal at Nuremberg, I did not know that Hitler was a Nazi. The truth was that for years I thought he worked for the phone company. When I finally did find out what a monster he was, it was too late to do anything, as I had made a down payment on some furniture. Once, toward the end of the war, I did contemplate loosening the Führer's neck napkin and allowing some tiny hairs to get down his back, but at the last minute my nerve failed me. At Berchtesgaden one day, Hitler turned to me and said, "How would I look in sideburns?" Speer laughed and Hitler became affronted. "I'm quite serious, Herr Speer," he said. "I think I might look good in sideburns." Göring, that obsequious clown, concurred instantly, saying, "The fur and sideburns, what an excellent idea." Speer still disagreed. He was, in fact, the only one with enough integrity to tell the Führer when he needed a haircut. "Too flashy," Speer said now. "Sideburns are the kind of thing I'd associate with Churchill." Hitler became incensed. Was Churchill contemplating sideburns, he wanted to know, and if so, how many and when? Himmler, supposedly in charge of intelligence, was summoned immediately. Göring was annoyed by Speer's attitude and whispered to him, "Why are you making waves, eh? If he wants sideburns, let him have sideburns." Speer, usually tactful to a fault, called Göring a hypocrite and an order of bean curd in a German uniform. Göring swore he would get even, and it was rumored later that he had special SS guards French Speer's bed. Himmler arrived in a frenzy. He had been in the midst of a tap dancing lesson when the phone rang, summoning him to Berchtesgaden. He was afraid it was about a misplaced carload of several thousand cone-shaped party hats that had been promised Rommel for his winter offensive. Himmler was not accustomed to being invited to dinner at Berchtesgaden because his eyesight was poor and Hitler could not bear to watch him bring the fork up to his face and then stick the food somewhere on his cheek. Himmler knew something was wrong because Hitler was calling him Shorty, which he only did when annoyed. Suddenly, the Führer turned on him, shouting, "Is Churchill going to grow sideburns?" Himmler turned red. "Well?" Himmler said there had been word that Churchill contemplated sideburns, but it was all unofficial. As to size and number, he explained, there would probably be 2 of medium length, but no one wanted to say before they could be sure. Hitler screamed and banged his fist on the table. This was a triumph for Göring over Speer. Hitler pulled out a map and showed us how he meant to cut off England's supply of hot towels. By blockading the Dardanelles, Donitz could keep the towels from being brought ashore and laid across anxiously awaiting British faces. But the basic question remained: could Hitler beat Churchill to sideburns? Himmler said Churchill had a head start and that it might be impossible to catch him. Goring, that vacuous optimist, said the Fuhrer could probably grow sideburns quicker, particularly if we marshaled all of Germany's might in a concentrated effort. Von Rundstedt, at a meeting of the General Staff, said it was a mistake to try to grow sideburns on two fronts at once and advised that it would be wiser to concentrate all efforts on one good sideburn. Hitler said he could do it on both cheeks simultaneously. Rommel agreed with von Rundstedt. They will never come out even, mein Führer, he said. Not if you rush them. Hitler became enraged and said that it was a matter for him and his barber. Speer promised he could triple our output of shaving cream by the fall, and Hitler was euphoric. Then, in the winter of 1942, the Russians launched a counteroffensive and the sideburns came to a halt. Hitler grew despondent, fearing that soon Churchill would look wonderful while he still remained ordinary. But shortly thereafter, we received news that Churchill had abandoned the idea of sideburns as too costly. Once again, the Fuhrer had been proved right. After the Allied invasion, Hitler developed dry, unruly hair. This was due in part to the Allies' success and in part to the advice of Goebbels, who told him to wash it every day. When General Guderian heard this, he immediately returned home from the Russian front and told the Fuhrer he must shampoo his hair no more than 3 times weekly. This was the procedure followed with great success by the General Staff in 2 previous wars. Hitler once again overruled his generals and continued washing daily. Bormann helped Hitler with the rinsing and always seemed to be there with a comb. Eventually, Hitler became dependent on Bormann, and before he looked in a mirror, he would always have Bormann look in it first. As the Allied armies pushed east, Hitler's hair grew worse. Dry and unkempt, he often raged for hours about how he would get a nice haircut and a shave when Germany won the war, and maybe even a shine. I realize now he never had any intention of doing those things. One day, Hess took the Fuhrer's bottle of Vitalis and set out in a plane for England. The German High Command was furious. They felt Hess planned to give it to the Allies in return for amnesty for himself. Hitler was particularly enraged when he heard the news, as he had just stepped out of the shower and was about to do his hair. Hess later explained at Nuremberg that his plan was to give Churchill a scalp treatment in an effort to end the war. He had got as far as bending Churchill over a basin when he was apprehended. Late in 1944, Göring grew a mustache, causing talk that he was soon to replace Hitler. Hitler was furious and accused Göring of disloyalty. "There must be only one mustache among the leaders of the Reich, and it shall be mine," he cried. Göring argued that 2 mustaches might give the German people a greater sense of hope about the war, which was going poorly, but Hitler thought not. Then, in January of 1945, a plot by several generals to shave Hitler's mustache in his sleep and proclaim Donitz the new leader failed when von Stauffenberg, in the darkness of Hitler's bedroom, shaved off one of the Fuhrer's eyebrows instead. A state of emergency was proclaimed, and suddenly Goebbels appeared at my shop. "An attempt was just made on the Fuhrer's mustache, but it was unsuccessful," he said, trembling. Goebbels arranged for me to go on radio and address the German people, which I did with a minimum of notes. "The Fuhrer's all right," I assured them. "He still has his mustache. Repeat, the Fuhrer still has his mustache. A plot to shave it has failed." Near the end, I came to Hitler's bunker. The Allied armies were closing in on Berlin, and Hitler felt that if the Russians got there first, he would need a full haircut, but if the Americans did, he could get by with a light trim. Everyone quarreled. In the midst of all this, Bormann wanted a shave, and I promised him I would get to work on some blueprints. Hitler grew morose and remote. He talked of parting his hair from ear to ear and then claimed that the development of the electric razor would turn the war for Germany. "We will be able to shave in seconds, eh, Schmeed?" he muttered. He mentioned other wild schemes and said that someday he would have his hair not just cut, but shaped. Obsessed as usual by sheer size, he vowed he would eventually have a huge pompadour, one that will make the world tremble and will require an honor guard to comb. Finally, we shook hands and I gave him a last trim. He tipped me 1 pfennig. I wish it could be more, he said. But ever since the Allies have overrun Europe, I've been a little short.